And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome aboard to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. He, your sensei, your griot, here to tell you a story and don't believe a word I say. Right? Now, I probably have at least 2,000 of these shows here, and I would suggest you go look at whatever you like and put it on some kind of, CD-ROM probably the best since it's not a electronic, it's optical, right? And yeah, those things degrade, but you put it on your hard, your thumb drive, your terabyte flip flop. Who knows if you could ever get it back once shit hits the fan? But CD-ROM, I'll be able to get that back. But anyway, how many of you read your Bible? Right? The Bible is pretty much a oh, a sci-fi discotheque, right? Uh, I'm going to read you a little something. Let's see if I can. I don't have my reading glasses, but I'm kind of going blind here. I'm going to be going under the laser soon. Okay, let's see. Hold it far away, light it up. And he came down with them and stood in the plain. Plain, right? And so, and he came down with them. What does that mean? So people get a little flummoxed over the concept of Father, Son, Holy Ghost, right? And verifying what? I can't even read what that says. I'm just gonna do that. See if that does anything. Anyway, if you haven't noticed, the digital world is, changing a tad, right? And it's getting ready. We're getting ready to have, and I've been talking about this now almost 7 years. The big splat, right? That's what I called it. The big splat. There are a lot of other terms for it, but here in Luke 6:17 through 19. And he came down with them, right? So he came down with them, meaning God came down with them meaning us, the humans, right? The and not just the humans, but all our relations, and stood in the plain, Plain, right? Stood, not sitting, stood, right? Shoulder to shoulder, right? Plain, right? What does that, right? Greek, what does that word mean? It means let's ask Google. What does plain mean in English and Greek?
Here's the definition of plain: not decorated or elaborate, simple or ordinary in character.
What does it mean in Greek? What is the Greek root of plain? 1300 CE, flat, smooth, from Old French, flat, smooth, even, from Latin, planus, flat, level, sense of explicit, clean, evident is from late, meaning simple, sincere, ordinary. Recording from 14C, especially dressed, unembellished, without decoration or idols, unabound with falsity, truth of the word. Right? He came down with them and stood in the plain, meaning with the truth of the word. Right? And the company of his company of his disciples and a great multitude of people out of all of Judah, Jerusalem, and from the sea coast to Tyre and Sidon, which came to bear him, and he beheld in their disease. Right? Now, disease, what does that mean? Lack of ease, right? Their disability. It's not like their toe fungus, right? So um, it was their heart that was disabled, right? And so when you have a machine or a computer program and you disable the program, what does it mean? It can't run. And they that were vexed with unclean spirit, and were they were healed. And the whole multitude sought to touch him, for there went virtue out of him and healed them all. And that is what God's love does, right? So I just read that to you. And if you're hearing this, it's in your cerebral cortex, right? In your RAM. And I want you to close your eyes and breathe deep. And I'm going to count from 1 to 3. And as I do, you're going to go deeper and deeper and deeper into a state of conscious relaxation, right? 1, your eyes are closing. You're sitting or lying down in a safe position, right? You're not operating any heavy equipment or driving a car or doing anything like that. You are in a safe place, right? See it clearly. And breathe deep. Fill your lungs. More, more, more. And what it's doing is lifting your diaphragm up and giving space to your stomach and your intestines, right? And you're breathing more and more and more of that prana, that light, that not incandescent light, but photonic light of God's love. And that is what animates us. See it clearly. And to breathe in this deep, you have to breathe out twice as deep. And what you're doing is you're evacuating all the negative energy, all the anger, all the fear, all the self loathing, and you're giving space for God's love to come inside of you. See it clearly. And every day, in every way, take the peace of the earth with conscious intent to co create with one love, with love's co creation. Again, when we are looking at theological truths, like Luke there, we have to open up our eyes, right? And everything around us is um, a truth. And you can either be overtaken by the illusion, which is fostered by fear and anger, or you can step back and have a perspective and see what it really is. So I'm just going to kind of thumb through stuff here, there, and everywhere and see what you get out of it. See, you're already in state, right? You're right there. And listen to this.
I think that the idea that wins is that there is a supermajority in America that is for democracy.
I agree.
And it is a nonpartisan supermajority of people who disagree with each other on a million different things. But there is one thing that is a very clear choice in this election, and it is between having a democracy and not. And if you...
Now, having democracy or not. Now, that's given the illusion that one or the other candidate represents not a democracy or a democracy, and that's not true. Both represent the same thing, not having a democracy.
As we close down communities
Now, here's a guy named Jimmy Dore, right?
centers and hand them over to migrants that are being.
It was hard to sum up the outrage of that afternoon. There were many thoughtful political statements being made. But looking around, it was difficult to miss the real catchphrase of the day.
I don't co-parent.
Boom, boom, boom. So we have to realize that God resides within our heart, right? And what are we going to do with all of that, right? When we can't even get away from our fear, right? When we can't let go of our dynamic of not knowing what to say or do, right? So we had Jojo, the used car salesman, tell us um, what's true. He's saying blah 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 blah. Look what I've done already for you. This is what I'm gonna do. The other guy is whichever of those two morons is elected, and they're not elected, they're put in. Everything is scripted. This war in the Ukraine is scripted. We have two Vlads. We have and they're both shrimps. They're both Napoleon complex guys. One's a stand-up comedian, and the other is, the Rusky, right? And they're both working for the CIA. When Tucker went and interviewed Vlad in Russia, Vlad said to Tucker, "Well, you work for the CIA, right?" And so, Vlad, you should go listen to that interview in total. It's on YouTube. And I mean, not just a little bit you see on Fox or wherever Tucker showed his part, but the whole thing. And Vlad lets go a lot of truth, right? And the Ukraine war will go on until they have the last Russian, right? Will die, And a lot more Russians have died than have been allowed to believe. And a lot more Ukrainians have died than been allowed to believe. And a lot more Palestinians in the Strip have died that have been allowed to believe, and there've been a lot more IDF soldiers who have died that have been allowed to believe. There's a lot of deaths. There's a lot of death in Africa, and we are not heading to end of times. The Christians who want to be sucked up in Jello as the chosen ones while everyone suffers for 7 years. Well, we basically have been suffering for the last, 100,000 years. That's pretty much how long humanity has been playing this game, right? And that movie, The Matrix, pretty much, we're stuck in a matrix. And that scene where Neo ends up in the architect's office and there's this whole wall of screens and there's thousands of Neos going through the trip over and over. And they're not all the same. Some are like, transgendered Neos. Some are, Neos, dressed as, elephants. And the question is, what are you guys? Which are you? Are you an elephant or are you a hippopotamus? Which are you? Love to hear that. This is a live chat. You guys can say something if you want. Right? What's Jimmy rant?
As we close down community centers and hand them over to migrants that are being let in through an open border policy that is being manipulated by the international global billionaires that run this country.
As we pay.
Nobody in this country wants Dennis Kucinich. Who's such a lefty? The Democrats gerrymandered him out of his own district. Dennis Kucinich was on this show a few weeks ago, and I asked him about the border. He said, "You got to shut it down. You got to shut down the border." Everybody knows you have to have control of your border, or you don't have a country. And right now, I still have to take my shoes off at the airport. But you can let 7 million immigrants in with not knowing where they're going or what they're doing, and hand them a gift card at the same time.
Yeah.
And this is not to demonize migrants. The 7 million Venezuelans who left their country in the last few years, they did so because the United States has sanctions on their country, and we keep trying to overthrow their government, and we're trying to make their lives a living hell in Venezuela. As we close down community centers and hand them over to migrants.
So, Jimmy does a pretty good job, but like everyone else, including your sensei Bob, he has his own twist on things, right? So, I wish I could find this other thing I'm looking for, but such and such. And if you haven't noticed how crazy the weather is, I wonder why that is.
To block the road. Now, anywhere else the president of the United States goes, they block off the road for blocks and blocks and blocks. House for the first time, or if you will sell your old house and move up, he will also.
Phantom plane. Ooh.
Some migraine attacks catch you off guard, but for me, a stressful day can trigger migraine attacks too. That's why my go.
His helmet is open. The giant is getting smaller. Will it become our size?
He's gonna be naked. The girl's gonna say, "Whoa, look at that schwanz."
Let's go in and get him. Wait, we have a weapon. He should stand trial. We must take him to Cecil.
Yep. Boo, 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 boo. I mean, what is real? You tell me. Come on. Oh, there's one person there. Chat. Come on. We got a chat going. Let's hear the chat. Republicans or worse? How worse are they?
But he makes an excellent scapegoat. When all else fails, blame Donald Trump, right? Okay. Yeah. The other thing that he said was that he wants thousands more border agents and hundreds more judges so that illegals can be processed in 6 months, not 6 years. He again blamed Republicans for the border crisis.
Step inside the Infiniti QX60.
Had to buy some.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Natalie Brunell. Joining me this week is retired Colonel Douglas McGregor, CEO of Our Country, Our Choice, one of my most popular and most requested guests. It's great to see you, Colonel. Thanks so much for making the time.
Oh, sure. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I want to start with the big picture. When you look out at the American and geopolitical landscape, what keeps you up at night? What are you most concerned about given everything that's happening right now?
Well, fortunately, I sleep well come hell or high water, so not too much keeps me up. But I think there are a number of things. You know, you mentioned the economy, for instance. I see a lot of evidence that inflation continues to rise. It is not falling. So I don't think the Fed has, quote unquote, won the battle with inflation. I continue to be concerned about the U.S. Treasury market. The Chinese are selling their treasuries, the long-term treasuries. I think we're going to see more of that from Japan, probably India, as well as Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. So my outlook on the economy is kind of grim. I continue to worry about a financial crisis that could then drive us into something much worse than just a recession, potentially. To that, you have to add this massive influx of people, more than 9 million since President Biden took office. And that probably has us up somewhere around 30 plus million or more illegals. My last discussions privately with people at the Department of Homeland Security, who are all deeply depressed and demoralized by Mayorkas, tell me that it's at least 30 million now. This is an enormous problem for us, especially when you end.
Prior to the 19th century, it was thought that Genesis of the Old Testament contained the oldest material of literature in the entire known world. In particular, the narratives about the Great Flood and the Tower of Babel. Sometime during the 19th century, archaeologists, in an effort to find the cities mentioned in the Bible, found something completely different and far more fascinating. What they found all over Mesopotamia are cuneiform tablets. Some of these tablets predated the biblical timeline of creation itself, and the contents of these tablets were shocking. In 1961, Samuel Noah Kramer, Syriologist, translated a text known as Enki in the World Order, which seems to be a textual ancestor to the Tower of Babel story. Here's what it says. Here's what it says. Sumer, great mountain, land of heaven and earth, trailing glory, bestowing powers on people from sunrise to sunset. Your powers are superior powers, untouchable, and your heart is complex and inscrutable. Like heaven itself, your good creative force, in which gods too can be born, is beyond reach, giving birth to kings who put on the good diadem, and giving birth to lords who wear the crown on their heads. Your Lord, the honored Lord, sits with Anu, the King of heaven. Your King, the great mountain, Father Enlil, the father of all the lands, has blocked you impenetrably like a cedar tree. The Anunnaki, the great gods, have taken up dwellings in your midst and consumed their food, Geguna, in your shrines with their single trees. Household Sumer, may your sheepfolds be built and your cattle multiply. May your Geguna touch the skies. May your good temples reach up to heaven. May the Anunnaki determine the destinies in your midst. The mysterious Anunnaki mentioned in that text are described as determining destiny. Who are these mysterious Anunnaki?
The story of Gilgamesh, the first thing that, our academics tell us is our first book, is the story of this. Right? And, Gilgamesh King, like God, but still a human. His ego a bit too much. The people, every time he gets carried away, they need him so they don't kill him. They take him to an island and he cools his jets like a timeout with a child, right? And he gets lonely, so he creates from the animals that are there. He creates a friend, and he has a friend. What is the friend's name? And the friend is more a human than Gilgamesh is, right? And in the text it says that Enkidu is not from a female's loins, right? Meaning Enkidu was genetically engineered. So we are in these times. These aren't new times. These are pretty much really old times. And what you have to realize is that you are a spirit. You are not this body, right? And this is just an avatar, so you can understand and experience the material world, which is the playground for the spirit to realize its ability to be not, man in God, not the God in man or the God man, but the God that is in man, right? Not the man that is in God, right? And that is the big sin. When you're not supposed to have false idols, that's the idol. We idolize ourselves, like the TV show, So the question is, so all of the stuff that's around. So people go, oh, how can you live the way you are? You have no money, you have no car, you have no place to live, blah, blah, blah. You're really sick. How do you live? Because I let God take care of everything. Right? I do what God tells me. I help a lot of people. One of my skill sets is I have a pretty good sense of perspective, and I help people attain what they want. Right? Now, a lot of these people attain vast fortunes and power, and and has any one of those folks ever said, "How's Al doing? So maybe he needs a little something, something." No, not really. Nobody. I mean, my PayPal still works. You want to stick something in it? Go ahead. That's the dudewake42 at Gmail. And so I live in a material world. Cash. Fluidity, green power is helpful, but not necessary because God takes care of everything. Right? So I live like a millionaire on $400 a month. It restricts me from where I go, what I can do, et cetera, et cetera. So I do what God tells me. What does God say? It says to go on the YouTube and talk to you guys and not make you believe anything, right? Because every time I do a show, I do it in a shamanic ceremony that I'm a slave to God's love, and I drop that little pebble of unconditional love into the World Wide Web. Period. Right? God constantly says, just tell the story. They don't have to believe it. You just tell the story. So I do. So JoJo's thing was, pretty surreal. But no more surreal than let's see what latest seals Trump's.
So the 2024 U.S. presidential election is just 8 months away. The candidates, if they make it that long, have been selected. And if the polls and pundits are correct, it looks like we already have a winner. Barring any special report between now and Election Day, we interrupt this program to bring you a special report. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just been handed the special report. And it's the news you've either been dreading or anxiously awaiting. Donald Trump is dead. As in, dead last.
Trump is ranked dead last.
And Donald Trump rated
dead last at 45.
No, that's not the result of his IQ test. Those are the findings of the American Political Science Association's annual Presidential Greatness Project. And in recognition of his unbridled incompetence, intolerance, ineptitude, and incontinence, the shardy charlatan failed his way to the bottom of this year's list. And thanks to his numerous indictments, indictable crimes, Trump was a shoo-in, easily out-disgracing last year's worst president ever recipient, himself. Yet despite these lifetime non-achievement awards, Trump is still the savior of MAGA and the Republican Party. And after his latest rally in Virginia, it's no wonder. Trump's painting of the United States as a third world dystopian hellscape on the verge of collapse is a complete and total lie. And more importantly, a disservice to Joe Biden and the Democrats in power who have worked so hard to pull us out of the dumpster fire he created.
Now, that's kind of true, but it's also kind of a big lie because none of these morons have anything to do with what's going on. You know, in 1999, in 2000, when, you know, Al Gore against George W., Bill Clinton took the money that our government owed, our debt, and brought it to zero, right? And George W. and Dick C. Ran our debt up to $2 trillion within before 9/11. You know, within 6 months, they had jacked up our debt by $2 trillion. By the time they left, by the time Obama came in 2008, they had ran up our debt to close to $12 trillion. And so quickly, that's what gave the shock to the banks. Right? And the banks did, you know, they didn't care. They just, Jamie Dimon et al. Just kept getting those big golden parachute checks, and they didn't care, you know, and they still don't care. And they are middle management. They aren't in charge. They aren't, you know, the 1,000 billionaires in the United States that only pays 8% in taxes, right? And then that's before they start nibbling it away on their things that they can write off, right? So like Elon Musk, you know, he pays way less than 8%, right? Richest man, right? And he's about to lend Donnie Trump $1 billion, and he's going to own, literally in front of our face, own Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is in there to destroy the Republican Party. But little do most people know that the liberal arm of our government was the Republican Party. The Democrats were the, you know, Dixiecrats, the Ku Klux Klan, and they still are, you know. And so don't believe a word I say. And within the construct of what you're seeing in front of your face, it's like, forget about it. It's so listen to this, Bill. Crime right now, crime is
out there. And in particular, it sounds like the White House is counting on time to bring that change. If there's a ceasefire, which the White House has been negotiating for weeks, fruitlessly so far, that would change things.
There is. I mean, you've also, though, seen, I think the challenge for Biden, though, is fundamentally, you know, he's even gotten pushback from, if you look at, you know, some, I would say, rather high-profile senators like Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, who have come out and said, you know, you need to do more in terms of pressuring the Israeli government. And I think the challenge for Biden is that even in doing a peer access to let aid in via the state.
And that's a joke. A peer, I mean, that'll take months to prepare. It'll put boots on the ground, which will basically draw us into the war. Right? Not a smart idea. But people don't realize this is all scripted, meaning what's going down in, you know, Israel slash the Strip is that it's been foretold that all of this will start this great conflagration, right? No, it's just another war that people can make money at, and a lot of innocent people are going to die, and it will be the end of Israel, but it'll be the end of Israel at Israel's own hands, meaning they're going to put. You think things are bad? You think this is a Holocaust or whatever you want to call it? No, it's not even close. Wait for another month. And at that point, it's going to shake the Israeli people, the population, the 6 million Israels that are there, to the point where they're going to say they're going to wake up and they're going to leave Israel, right? Leaving Israel with a population of less than 1 million. They won't have anybody to run their high-tech war machine or their economy or even keeping the lights on at home. So it's good luck, right? And this will also, the U.S. is totally complicit, right?
See, I mean, that's something that countries don't do with allies. Usually, if you would pressure your ally, Israel, to allow the land route to open, and you heard a little bit of that today. I think there is a recognition, though, from this White House that they need to take this issue head on. I think both from a national security standpoint, but also from a domestic political standpoint.
Will they? He will do all. I'm going to build a land bridge so they can get trucks in it. No, and he's not going to do zip.
A little bit of the style of this speech, the president stumbled.
And they don't talk about the soldier who set himself on fire because he was, he joined the military. He was a smart kid. He could not have to join the military. He wanted to serve his country, do something good. And he was involved with not fighting the war, well, facilitating Israel, right? And he talked, he went through the command chain and said, hey, should we be doing this? They said, shut up, do your job. To the point where he marched up in front, I think, of Israel's place in D.C. I'm not quite sure where he immolated himself, but he was in his uniform and he was talking. He did a live stream while he set himself on fire, and he explained why he was doing it until he went into shock and keeled over. That's someone with some convictions. I'd like to see our politicians have convictions like that.
The president stumbled over some prepared lines and at the same time was ad-libbing from time to time. There were entire passages of this speech, we noted, that were not in the speech that seemed to have occurred.
And if you think that was just he was ad-libbing, he was being honest. No, everything is scripted, period. Just because it wasn't on the script that the news guys got doesn't mean that JoJo didn't do it.
Referred to him in the moment.
Yeah, he improvised. He was spontaneous. He came in shouting, which is
no. He was, drafted to seem to be improvising, spontaneous. A strong. I mean, he went on for almost an hour and a half. So
which is a way that people show that they're strong and vigorous. I mean, he talked softly at times, but also I think he worked hard to address the age issue. Of course, he talked about it a lot at the end. At the very end, he talked softly.
From fentanyl poisonings, how many times a day of a permanent politician
in this Congress
about what the American one tonight, one about what President Biden, the Chinese.
There's nothing in here that Barack Obama would have disagreed with, or even Bill Clinton.
Sure, and he also went back and said, if you threaten
because
Social
they are
Security, I will
all
stop
on the same page.
I want to note for those listening, thank you by the way for listening or for watching at npr.org or elsewhere, that we are going to carry the Republican response to this speech in a few
Listen
minutes.
to this.
Katie Boyd Britt, United States Senator from Alabama, in her 40s, rising star in the Republican Party, will give the speech in a little while. Meanwhile, we'll hear a little bit more of what the president had to say. And let's talk about the broad theme of this speech. The president talked a lot about restoring or defending freedom. And let's hear a little bit of what he had to say about that. No, we will not have it, but he said there are state laws banning the right to choose, criminalizing doctors, forcing survivors of rape and incest to leave their states as well to get the care they need. Many of you in this chamber and my predecessor are promising to pass a national ban on reproductive freedom. My God, what freedoms will you take away next? Mara Eliason, that's about a specific issue that works for him, abortion, but he's also using it to make broader points.
He's using the language, at least the word freedom, which Republicans have kind of owned for a long time, but he's recasting it in a different way. They used to talk about freedom from big government and regulations, but now he's saying, reproductive freedom, the freedom to make your own choices for your own family, your own body. That's how he's defining it, and that has been when Democrats focus group this and poll it, it really.
I think there's a substantive reason for this as well. This is a different Republican Party where there is not every Republican, but a number of Republicans are taking that Ron DeSantis approach that government needs to in imposing traditional values or defending traditional values.
Big government Republican style.
Yes, exactly. So, Helen, what else stood out for you?
Far into this speech, the president did touch on an issue, a major foreign policy issue that I think has been really galvanizing parts of his base, and that's the war in the Middle East. And I think what we heard from the president tonight was perhaps, I think, the strongest and furthest he's gone in acknowledging the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. You heard him talk about a new plan to create a temporary pier along the Gaza coast to let humanitarian aid in. This is directly in response to the fact that they have not been able to pressure the Netanyahu government into allowing land ports open. He also talked directly to the Israeli leadership and said, don't think that humanitarian aid should be used as a bargaining chip. I mean, I think over time of covering this White House and covering in particular this conflict from the lens of the White House, Steve, there is a growing frustration with the Netanyahu government. And I think that some of that came through in what we heard from Biden today. But there's also, I think, a reality that this is an issue for a portion of his base, and the images and as the death toll climbs, Biden needs to take this issue head on.
Biden is paying a price for this politically, isn't he?
I think with a portion of his base, he seems to be paying paying a price for it. I do think it's relatively unknown as to how big of a price this may be. You talk to folks within the campaign, you talk to I think Biden allies, and there's a sense that the reality of this crisis in the Middle East may really be different October, November, and there's an assumption that when Donald Trump is on the other side, voters will make a choice between Joe Biden and Donald Trump on this issue. But at this point in time, it has been one of the biggest vulnerabilities.
He's heard from the supporters. We think about the Michigan primary. He heard from the supporters.
If you can't tell that is spin like you can't believe. I mean, if he wanted to stop this war, he could just get on the phone and say, Bibi, you're not getting another dime, you're not getting another but period. And that would show some moral turpitude, right? Stamina. He's being because that's like, whoa, because, basically the Israeli lobby owns our government, at least senators, congressmen, and state legislatures. And so he's, he has to seem like he's, standing up to Bibi. Bibi knows this, so it's no big deal. It's scripted. All of this is scripted. You can't realize this is scripted. You've already drank the Kool-Aid. Right?
Supporters are past supporters. I can't bear to do it, and I can't come back to you unless I see some change. It sounds like the White House is counting on time to bring that change. If there's a ceasefire.
How much time do the kids in the strip have, right? How much? The bodies they've counted is 50,000, give or take, and yet they haven't really. Israel has gone into the north, into the major city, Gaza City there in the center, and they've, after they blew up everything with airstrikes and tanks, they go in there with demolition teams and take out everything. And then go in with gigantic bulldozers, and there isn't a road, a building, a school, a hospital, nothing. So we can't even go, build up, pull up the concrete to see how many bodies were under those buildings, right? So if first of all, we have to pray for the innocents, right? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. As was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be, world without amen. Now, no one's watching, no one's saying anything, but there will be folks who watch this. And in the beginning, I started out with a sermonic interaction, right? So that means you guys who are watching this are in state. That means the folks in the World Wide Web, that pebble has been put in the pond, and this energetic of understanding of love's co-creation is wave after wave after wave. It's going around the world, right? And it's not me doing this, it's God's unconditional love. I am just God's slave.
Fire, which the White House has been negotiating for weeks, fruitlessly so far, that would change
It
things.
is. I mean, you've also though seen. I think the challenge for Biden though is fundamentally, he's even gotten pushback from, if you look at, some I would say rather high-profile senators like Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, who have come out and said, you need to do more in terms of pressuring the Israeli government. And I think the challenge for Biden is that even in doing a peer access to let aid in via the sea, I mean, that's something that countries don't do with allies. Usually, if you would pressure your ally, Israel, to allow the land route to open, and you heard a little bit of that today. I think there is a recognition, though, from this White House that they need to take this issue head on. I think both from a national security standpoint, but also from a domestic political standpoint.
Mara Liasson, I want to note a little bit of the style of this speech. The president stumbled over some prepared lines, and at the same time,
President Biden's failures don't stop there. And then you heard a little bit of that today. I think there is a recognition, though, from this White House that they need to take this issue head on. I think both from a national security standpoint, but also from a domestic political standpoint.
Mara Liasson, I want to note a little bit of the style of this speech. The president stumbled over some prepared lines, and at the same time was ad-libbing from time to time. There were entire passages of this speech we noted that were not in the speech that seemed to have occurred to him in the moment.
Yeah, he improvised. He was spontaneous. He came in shouting, which is a way that people show that they're strong and vigorous. I mean, he talked softly at times, but also I think he worked hard to address the age issue. Of course, he talked about it a lot at the very end. And I think that, yes, he had a lot of stumbles, and that's kind of standard for President Biden, but his voice was strong, and he came across as a fighter. He talked about all the things he would do. He would stop this from happening, or he would, do this for the middle class. I'm just waiting to see what the results of this will be and whether this changes people's impressions of him. We just don't know.
I'm with Mara on that. I mean, I do think that, there are moments during this speech where he stumbled over words, misspoke, that reinforce some of the voters' concerns about his age. I think for those of us who
don't realize that, the only person that Biden can win over is Donald Trump. Just like the only person that Donald Trump could win over was Hillary Clinton. Nothing is done by chance. Things aren't done by some, oh, look, this is our politics and see how well it works and we're in a democracy. Sorry, guys, we aren't. Now, God's love is this unmitigating. God knows everything. God doesn't do everything, but allows things to happen. So this is all being allowed to happen.
Those of us who listen to him speak regularly, maybe we hear these things routinely, but I don't know how it translates.
Now, listeners do not have prepared remarks. They're not going to be able to compare what was written and what he said. It's when he stumbled, they'll be able to notice that, but they won't notice when he didn't say the
True. I do wonder, though, about, the cadence, the stumbles, as you say. I wonder how that translates, and I just don't know that we will have a sense of that. And look, this is a very high-profile moment for the president, but it's not the only high-profile moment. likely a lot of folks will pay attention to that convention speech this summer. And there are moments in which he is needing and expected to perform without any mistakes.
I want to note that we're watching the video feed. The president, it's been quite some time since the speech ended, is still on the House floor chatting now with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and other members, or the members of the Joint Chiefs. And he's continuing to talk there. And we're going to go to Claudia Grisales, who is still at the Capitol and has one more observation. Claudia, what's on your mind?
Right, I thought it was very striking in the president's speech tonight how much time he spent speaking about the border. As we know, there was a bipartisan border bill put together by a group of senators over several months' time. It appeared Republicans would push forward with that in exchange for aid for Ukraine, Israel, and other allies. However, that imploded as Republicans turned on that, including former President Trump. Many said they were influenced by his direction to not go in the direction of this legislation. And so it's interesting to see the president tonight spend so much time talking about the border, talking about the concerns with asylum, but also talking about the demonization of immigrants and that he would not go there. And this is a theme I heard about when I traveled in the Texas border region recently. I spoke to Democratic members in the region, and
We got to stop you there because we now have the Republican response from Senator Katie Boyd Britt.
Two school-age kids. My daughter Bennett and my son Ridgway are why I ran for the Senate. I'm worried about their future and the future of children in every corner of our nation. And that's why I invited you into our home tonight. Like so many families across America, my husband Wesley and I just watched President Biden's State of the Union address from our living room. And what we saw was the performance of a permanent politician who has actually been in office for longer than I've been alive. One thing was clear, though. President Biden just doesn't get it. He's out of touch. Under his administration, families are worse off. Our communities are less safe, and our country is less secure. I just wish he understood what real families are facing around kitchen tables just like this one. You know, this is where our family has tough conversations. It's where we make hard decisions. It's where we share the good, the bad, and the ugly of our days. It's where we laugh together. And it's where we hold each other's hands and pray for God's guidance. And many nights, to be honest, it's where Wesley and I worry. I know we're not alone. And so tonight, the American family needs to have a tough conversation. Because the truth is, we're all worried about the future of our nation. The country we know and love seems to be slipping away, and it feels like the next generation will have fewer opportunities and less freedom than we did. I worry my own children may not even get a shot at living their American dreams. My American dream allowed me, the daughter of two small business owners from rural Enterprise, Alabama, to be elected to the United States Senate at the age of 40. Growing up, sweeping the floor at my dad's hardware store and cleaning the bathroom at my mom's dance studio, I never could have imagined what my story would entail. To think about what the American dream can do across just one generation, in just one lifetime, it's truly breathtaking. But right now, the American dream has turned into a nightmare for so many families. The true, unvarnished state of our union begins and ends with this. Our families are hurting. Our country can do better. I don't have to look any further than the crisis at our southern border to see it. President Biden inherited the most secure border of all time. But minutes after taking office, he suspended all deportations, he halted construction of the border wall, And he announced a plan to give amnesty to millions. We know that President Biden didn't just create this border crisis, he invited it with 94 executive actions in his first 100 days. When I took office, I took a different approach. I traveled to the Del Rio sector of Texas. That's where I spoke to a woman who shared her story with me. She had been sex trafficked by the cartels starting at the age of 12. She told me not just that she was raped every day, but how many times a day she was raped. The cartels put her on a mattress in a shoebox of a room, and they sent men through that door over and over again for hours and hours on end.
Okay, enough of that.
We wouldn't be okay with this happening in a
Oh, so I'm wearing this hat, Guatemala, because back in the day, the United States has, since the Mexican War, basically militarily and financially controlled the Central Mexico, Central and South America, right? And all the violence that's coming up and going across our border has been done on purpose, right? It was manufactured. Basically, it started, 100 years ago, but basically, and further back, like the Mexican War, which is, 18 something or other. And so basically, Mexico, Canada, and the United States are one country. You don't know that, but they are, right? Whether it is Biden or Donald Trump, after this election, they're going to build their own Gaza Strip along the southern border of the United States and put all of the immigrants in there, right? They're going to have factories where people work for $3 an hour making car parts. And they'll have lots of shoeboxes there with young ladies in them. And the only way that they're going to, why have all these people been brought in here? And it, our border wasn't secure under Donnie, right? He had more folks coming in than JoJo, right? They were both, and because they do not control anything, they don't do anything except, Donnie is training to be president, was 10 years of being a game show host. Biden's was 50 something years of being a senator and, living off the grips. When Donnie goes, crooked Biden, everyone in government is crooked, period. Now, the only way this is going to, and you cannot get your AR and go have a revolution. Sorry, kids, can't do that. What you can do is bring, and Donnie goes, we have to have a Christian nation. No. Does anyone out there, there's one person there. So answer me this one person. What is the First Amendment? Tell me what the First Amendment is. Anyone know what the First Amendment is? The first sentence of the First Amendment. Can anyone tell me what it is? Come on. Come on, give it a shot. Well, it's freedom. No, sorry. Free speech. No. What? It's not free speech? No, that first sentence. What does the first sentence of the First Amendment say? Let's, no, I can't. Can I ask Google? I think I can. Let's see what Google says. What is the First Amendment of the Constitution?
According to Wikipedia, the First Amendment to the United States Constitution prevents the government from making laws that regulate an establishment of religion, prohibit the free exercise of religion, abridge the freedom.
So it says, let's see, go back to this. Quote, what is the First Amendment of the Constitution?
According to National Archives, Amendment I, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
So the first thing is the separation of church and state, because they understood if you were a Christian nation, I mean, the other 70%, all the Jews, all the Hindus, all the Muslims, all the Buddhists, all the Sikhs, all those people would, be at harm's risk. You know what I'm saying? So no one, please know, the First Amendment, Google just read it out to you, right? Basically, the separation of church and state. And Downey goes, we have to go back to being a Christian country. We never were. Our founding fathers were all Masons. They were not Christians. You go to the Jefferson Memorial in D.C., and you go inside the rotunda there, and all up along the thing is Masonic quotes. Is images of him in his Masonic regalia. In the Capitol, there's a thing of the presidents, and the one of George Washington is he's totally wearing his Masonic apron, and he's going up into the illuminated light of the Masonic order. Why do we have, pyramid with the Eye of Horus on a $1 bill? It's right in front of you, kids. And so this year we are going to have the rude awakening, and there's going to be nukes. Basically, this is a ruse that the CIA is putting on. But Vlad in Russia, he Putin boy, he's reading his script, right? So, he's squeezing every little square inch of the eastern border of Ukraine, and little towns are falling, and Ukrainians go, oh, we need more bullets. But back in September, there were articles in the Washington Post, New York Times, and Wall Street Journal that the Defense Department and the State Department were complaining that Ukraine were wasting their ammunition because they were, they didn't want their people to be killed, right? They were adverse to the death of their soldiers and them being wounded. Whereas Russia, not so much. They were just pouring them in. So what's going to happen is there's going to be a faux, oops, oh my God, the thing is collapsed and the Russians are coming. And they're going to come straight up that same highway, but this time they're going to bring enough gasoline to make it all the way. But there will be, IEDs and javelins waiting for them. And it will be a total. Now, we have trained a number of their pilots to fly F-16s and A-10s, and we have placed a number of those aircraft either right on the border where they can just roll them over the border and take off on the road. And when that happens, those aircraft will come and basically take out whatever air cover Russia has, and they will, the A-10s will obliterate whatever mechanized divisions they have, to the point where Russia will be, and also we have already given Ukraine ATACMS, which are artillery shells that go, 600 miles. They have little wings and they're very accurate, and so that means that they can hit all of Russia's hardened line in eastern Ukraine, and also hit anything 300 miles over the border into Russia. So all of the supply depots, all of the train hubs, all of the highways, all of that will get obliterated. All of the oil, refineries slash tank fields will be blown up, and everything in on the Black Sea that Russia went in and conquered in 2014. They will take all of that out, and there's a million, and the Ukrainians are going to do the same thing the Russians, I mean the Israelis did to the Strip. There are a million Russians there, right? Who don't want, they were put there because they either had a choice of going to Crimea or going to jail. So there are about 1 million of those. A lot of them have gone back to Russia, but there are quite a few there, and they will not have anything to eat or drink. And when that occurs, and that will occur very quickly, like over a month period, that will happen. And Russia will respond by nuking Kiev and Odessa and killing 200,000 people in an evening. And then threaten, and all of this hardware is going to be coming over the border there, where they roll the airplanes from Poland onto this, road that they take off and attack the Russians. They're also going to hit Poland right there with a nuke, and that means they've attacked NATO, and Section 5 of the NATO Accord will come into play, and it will be kicked off. And that will be before, they call it the October surprise. That will be the October surprise. And it will occur because before then, right around, July, maybe earlier, April, probably might be even on Easter. That might be appropriate. Israel will nuke the Strip and, Beirut and, Iran. And Russia will use the excuse to nuke Europe by saying, look what Israel just did, right? And don't believe a word I say. I'm just an old guy telling you a story from the Bible, right? Don't believe a word I say. This is just for your entertainment's sake. And then, kids, good luck. I would start now, not going by, prepping, but no, being kinder to your family, being kind to everyone you meet, being nice, right? Be helpful, right? Okay, let's see. I'm going to do one last little thing here. Where is it? Here it is. This is the Celtic runes, right? The healing runes. And it's put together by Ralph Bloom. He's one of the better understanders of the Holy Runes. Okay. So, the question is, what should we do between now and then? Right? So, I'm going to be flipping through these pages here, and I'm going to wait for one of you to tell me to stop. Okay, good. Okay, here we go. This is what we need to do between now and then. Let's see if I can, it's really small print. Practice gratitude each day for the blessings you receive from God. Be grateful for the divine wisdom and guidance, for the courage to face your pain, and for the strength of your spirit. Be thankful for the love in your heart and the willingness to walk the path of healing. Right? So that's what God asks us to do. So I'm going to leave you with that one. And too bad there wasn't anybody there to really, have a conversation. But I hope enough of you see this so you can have a conversation with yourself. So that's kind of what I do every day. I have a conversation with God every day. There's a good book called Conversation with God. So I'm going to say, I love you guys. I'll see you. Tomorrow's supposed to rain. Who knows what I'll do. I might just spend the day in bed. So I'll talk to you later.